Good evening, Americans, and welcome to the Ed Show from New York. John Boehner is getting hammered by Republicans for caving on tax increases and walking away from Hurricane Sandy relief. 2013 is starting with a bang. This is the Ed Show. Let's get to work.
I will sign a law that raises taxes on the wealthiest 2% of Americans while preventing a middle-class tax hike.
The president gets his deal, but with the debt ceiling battle on the horizon, how long does the victory last?
Save your powder for the debt ceiling fight.
DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz will tell me where the Democrats go from here.
He got his tax increase, but he can't claim Republican fingerprints on his tax increase.
Well, wait.
Grover can't handle the truth, but his pledge is dead, and it's the end of an era for conservatives. Tonight, Karen Finney and Michael Steele on the Republican Party in disarray. The keynote speaker at the Republican convention destroys the Republican Congress.
There's only one group to blame, the House majority and their speaker, John Boehner.
Congressman Jerry Nadler on the Republican disgrace over Sandy relief funds. And when should Hillary Clinton expect those apologies from Fox News?
Hillary has severe Benghazi allergy.
Good to have you with us tonight, folks. Thanks for watching. It's a new year and a new deal. There's still a big fight ahead, but 2013 started with a major victory for the White House.
The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
With 257 votes in the House of Representatives, 85 of them coming from Republicans, all to put a deal together to avoid the fiscal cliff, and yes, it was passed. There was compromise on both sides. Both middle-class Americans went back to work today knowing their current tax rates are permanent. Financial markets, they were all about it. The Dow, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, all up big today. Republican members of Congress know the results of November's election haven't changed.
I looked at the policy of where we were going to be if we didn't pass it, or where we would be if we did. And while it was like eating a you-know-what sandwich to vote for this, to me it was a rite of passage to this quarter.
Meanwhile, House Democrats are taking time for a victory lap of sorts.
At the end of the day, it was House Democrats who injected some adult supervision, some pragmatism, a sense of compromise and solutions. That's what the country wants. It was House Democrats who stopped us from going off this cliff.
We even saw a Tea Party revolt end in failure. Far-right wingers of the House, the Republicans, were resigned to their fate after being told the compromise bill was going to go to the floor for a vote.
Are you disappointed the way that this has happened?
It is what it is.
President Obama and Vice President Biden negotiated this deal with America's middle class in mind. They could have allowed the country to go over the cliff, but the president was not willing to let struggling Americans face the consequences of a new year without a deal. Instead, this is what they achieved.
Under this law, more than 98% of Americans and 97% of small businesses will not see their income taxes go up. Millions of families will continue to receive tax credits to help raise their kids and send them to college. Companies will continue to receive tax credits for the research that they do, the investments they make, and the clean energy jobs that they create. And 2 million Americans who are out of work, but out there looking, pounding the pavement every day, are going to continue to receive unemployment benefits as long as they're actively looking for a job.
So who would argue with that deal? I mean, in an era of unprecedented obstruction, filibusters galore, President Obama, what has he done? He has gotten $620 billion in new revenue and no spending cuts. He also got more than 150 Republicans to vote for taxes to go up on the middle class. No one is denying that there will be tough fights ahead, but the president defined the terms of battle going forward.
Cutting spending has to go hand in hand with further reforms to our tax code so that the wealthiest corporations and individuals can't take advantage of loopholes and deductions that aren't available to most Americans.
This is a message to Republican leadership. If they want spending cuts, they have to cough up some more revenue. One thing we do know, the president will not have John Boehner as a negotiating partner anymore. The House Speaker told his caucus that he will no longer negotiate one-on-one with the President of the United States. Boehner isn't making too many Democratic friends on the Hill either. Politico reports Boehner told Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid to go blank himself. Part of the reason Boehner is so testy is a fracture in his own party's leadership. Republican leader Eric Cantor broke ranks with the Speaker when the deal came up for a vote. Boehner and House Budget Chairman Paul Ryan voted for the bill, while Cantor and House Whip Kevin McCarthy voted against it. What does that tell you? President Obama needs to move forward with plans to avoid the next fiscal crisis, the debt ceiling. He's not worried about engaging with a fractured GOP. The president is going right back to you, the American people. The White House getting after it, put on their website, publishing the facts, the sheet, what this tax deal is all about. The details were shared on the president's massive email list. The White House also released a video where the president explained his strategy of tax cuts and deficit reduction.
So instead, we're solving this problem in several steps. Last year, we started reducing the deficit through $1 trillion in spending cuts. And the agreement we reached this week will reduce the deficit even more by asking the wealthiest 2% of Americans to pay higher taxes for the first time in 2 decades.
President Obama,
so that's progress.
President Obama handled this showdown much the same way he handled other standoffs in his presidency. He knows that progress comes step by step, not all at once. Here's one major step. Remember the Bush tax cuts? They're all gone. They expired on the last day of 2012. The tax rates passed last night. These are now the Obama tax cuts. The difference between the Obama tax cuts and the Bush tax cuts, well, these are permanent. That means a lot. President Obama and Democrats accomplished these rates by getting Republicans to vote for tax increases on the wealthiest Americans for the first time in 22 years. 1990 was the last time any Republicans joined with Democrats to raise taxes. The president could have gone off the cliff and gotten more of what he wanted. Instead, he delivered for the middle class as promised on the campaign trail. The pressures on the middle class in this country are far greater today than they were 10 years ago. Since 2001, the middle income tier has shrunk by 5%. The net worth of middle class families is down 28%. Hold it right there. Think about where have your health care costs gone in the last 10 years. Gasoline 10 years ago was $1.40 a gallon. Where is it now? Well over $3. Would you like to have $1.40 a gallon? The economy has changed a lot. Whether there had been the Bush tax cuts or not, this president would have been on the front line saying we need to give relief to the middle class, and that's what this was all about. The tax deal was struck with these folks in mind. The 2012 election was about income inequality and tax fairness. We got closer to achieving both things last night. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question: is the fiscal cliff deal a victory for the middle class? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. You can always go to our blog at ed.msnbc.com. We'll bring the results later on in the show. Joining me tonight is Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida, chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee. Congresswoman, good to have you with us tonight. Congratulations.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to put for our viewers tonight in perspective just how big 39.6% is. A little history to this. This was passed in 1993, and the deciding vote was done by a congressional member from the Pennsylvania 13th District, Mezovinsky. Marjorie Margolis Mezovinsky. She served one term from 93 to 95. It cost her her seat. Now, it passed in the House by one vote. It was Al Gore who passed the deciding vote in the Senate. Well, last night you got 257 votes to raise taxes and get it back to 39.6%. That's how big a lift this was and what a big accomplishment it was. Now, Congresswoman, what's the next step?
It really can't be understated how significant this was. What this is, though, and it's certainly a significant accomplishment that we were able to make sure that the wealthiest Americans pay a little bit more, pay their fair share. That's what we argued throughout the whole campaign, was that everybody needs a fair shot, a fair shake, and everybody has to pay their fair share. What this bill does is it makes sure that we give a big gift wrap package of certainty to the middle class. Not just because we made sure that middle class taxes didn't go up, but that we also made sure we extended the American Opportunity Tax Credit, which will allow more young people the opportunity to go to college. We extended the child tax credit, which makes sure that people can have more money in their pocket when they have children and pay those expenses. We made sure that we permanently fixed the alternative minimum tax, which was getting ready each year to nail a huge number of middle-class folks who the tax was never intended to pay for. And we extended unemployment benefits for 2 million people for another year.
That is a big deal.
Really,
And that's without offsets. That's without offsets. Now, you got to get more revenue. Where are you going to go to get it? Where are you going to go to get more revenue?
Well, we've got to, as President Obama said last night, we've got to go to the tax code. We've got to sit down, and the next step of reform is in focusing on deficit reduction is going to have to be balanced. I mean, I've heard a lot of Republicans say all day today in interviews that, okay, you know, now we're done with taxes, we're done with revenue, and we can focus on spending cuts. The American people have made it very clear that they want a balanced approach.
But are you saying that you're not done with taxes?
But we are absolutely not done with making sure that any deficit reduction has revenue and spending cuts. And we'll also need to look at entitlement reform. President Obama knows that and has proposed in his grand bargain $4 trillion deal. Remember, he proposed another $360 billion in savings for entitlement programs, which we'll have an opportunity to look at.
But Congresswoman, can you tell us tonight where you can go to get revenue? I mean, I'm talking about, I mean, are we talking about a transaction tax on Wall Street, something like that?
No, I mean, we have to take a look at, we've talked for a long time about finally reforming the tax code. There are so many loopholes in the tax code that really also skew towards the wealthiest Americans that ultimately, if we're able to close those, we can make sure that when we do enact important spending cuts, that all that pain is not balanced on the backs of the middle class.
That's not the kind of tax reform Republicans are looking for, is it?
Well, the Republicans have said, I mean, look, Mitt Romney himself campaigned on reforming the tax code, and a lot of my Republican colleagues have said that we need to take a look at that on the Senate and the House side. But it just needs to be clear that that just because we had an increase in the tax rate for the top earners to 39.6%, that does not mean that revenue is off the table for the future.
Here's what the president said last night about Medicare. Caught a lot of people's attention. Here it is.
I agree with Democrats and Republicans that the aging population and the rising cost of health care makes Medicare the biggest contributor to our deficit. I believe we've got to find ways to reform that program without hurting seniors who count on it to survive.
That scares a lot of liberals in this country right now. What do you mean by draw the line? Where do you draw the line on cuts to the big three?
Well, I think the president's absolutely right. We do need to add savings to Medicare so that we can make sure we preserve it for the long term. We were able to do that with $760 billion in savings in the Affordable Care Act, and that added 8 years of solvency. And the president, as I said, proposed $360 billion in savings in the $4 trillion grand bargain that he put on the table. So we know there's more savings that can be wrung out of Medicare, and we're going to go back and make sure that we take a look at that. And Democrats, I think, will support a lot of those savings, but we're going to do it so that we make sure we don't do it at the expense of our seniors and enact harmful cuts that would hurt them.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz with us tonight here on The Ed Show. Thanks so much. It is a big victory for the Democrats and the country.